Weekly Wednesday Warrior, sponsored by Power Card Games and Comics in good old Port Huron, New York. My name is Skylar Hathaway.
I'm Chris Potter.
This is the show where we talk about weekly comics weekly. We're going to get started. So the first comic we're going over is Avengers Forever number 14. I got the Planet of the Apes variant cover. Chris got the regular cover. So, Avengers 14, before we get into it, let's do a little summary. Summary is going to be pretty quick for this one. It's a big old battle comic for the most part. They're in the midst of a battle with what was Mephisto's across the multiverse. They're now in a battle against a bunch of Dooms from across the multiverse. And the battle is being waged between a bunch of multiverse Avengers and a bunch of multiverse Dooms. And things are pretty crazy, pretty chaotic. But it's fun. The whole book's been fun, and I think that's where the writer Jason Aaron is going with the book. I've been reading this for 14 issues, and the issue that comes before it is a tie-in issue to Avengers, which is on issue like 68 or 72 or somewhere around there. And it's all been up my alley, but Chris over here is not as much of a fan. Chris, let's get your perspective on this book.
So yeah, it felt like I was tripping reading this book. I'm gonna be honest.
Like on drugs?
Yeah.
On
yes.
drugs?
Because I was so confused. The story was very readable. I actually wasn't confused about what I had missed. I think I got everything.
Yeah, it's
it was
simple.
just so weird.
Yeah.
So besides them being just multiversal Avengers, it's a lot of cross characters, like taking, I think it's Starbrand and Black Panther is one of them. There's Phoenix and Wolverine. A lot of kind of fun, kind of just weird mashups in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like less like a natural evolution of a character, like what this character already does. It's sort of similar to what this character does. It's put them together. It's just more like taking names out of a hat for fun.
Yeah. Or getting some soup and just kind of stirring ingredients and
seeing what works.
Seeing how it tastes once you pour it out and stuff.
Yeah, it was just a battle issue. There's not a lot to complain about.
No.
I thought, one thing we didn't talk about is, I think the through line of this issue is the Steve Rogers, the very skinny one, who has Mjolnir. He's writing a letter to no one in particular, because he's very sad and lonely. I don't know what else to say. They tried to make us like...
It's pretty accurate.
I don't know if they've built up this character over the run, but since this is my first issue, I felt that was Aaron trying to get us to like this guy as he's dying, because I imagine this book, Avengers Forever, is focused on a lot of different people. So he probably hasn't gotten that much screen time.
A butt ton. You'd be surprised. So
okay.
The prior issue was a whole issue that dealt with this Avengers Prime character, who ends up being Loki. And Jason Aaron has a habit of doing this throughout the entirety of the series, and it's gotten a little tiring, a little annoying, where he has the narrator in each issue be a different person. Okay. And it makes some inconsistencies, but it also makes consistencies at the same point. Because he is consistently having a different person every issue. But he is inconsistently driving one voice to tell the story. But that consistently keeps things interesting, because you have to keep guessing, who am I reading right now? What perspective am I getting from? You know, why? And why are we getting this perspective, right? Which is a big question in this comic, where Chris was going with, why are we hearing Nerd Steve, for lack of better?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of characters in the backgrounds of Avengers and Avengers Forever. There are so many characters in these comics, it's a little hard to even like zone in and keep one as a main character. And I think that's kind of Jason Aaron's point, why he keeps on bringing up all of these other characters and changing the narration. It's because there is no main character, really. I'd say maybe the most main character might even be the villain, because that's really the only character that's definitely in every issue. They talk about Mephisto and Doom constantly. And also in the last issue, they finally brought the 616 Avengers, our Avengers, into the fold.
Right, because it's a crossover story, right?
It's a crossover story, yeah, and they're doing that pretty seamlessly. I wanted to give some compliments. Marvel does a lot of crossover comics these days, and usually when they do crossover comics, you have to go and buy. I'm going to exaggerate here. I'm going to exaggerate here. 100 different tie-in comics. DC does the same thing. So I'm not saying that Marvel or DC doesn't do it, but with this, it's not go buy the 3-issue X-Men miniseries. Go buy the 3-issue Miss Marvel miniseries. It's all right. Here's Avengers. Here's Avengers Forever. Here's Avengers. Here's Avengers Forever. And it's not loose either. It's not a bunch of people writing a bunch of different books trying to tie it into the event or whatever. It's Jason Aaron running the whole damn thing.
Right.
So I really appreciate that he's willing to take double duty on comics, on monthly comics, to make sure that his story is consistent and that he's delivering what he wants the audience to see. I'm impressed by that on some level.
Yeah.
Let me not spend all this time on Jason Aaron, though. This guy, the art in the book is by this guy Jim Toe and Frank Martin. I'm under the impression that Jim Toe does the pencils and inks. I'm under the impression that Frank Martin is doing the colors. What'd you think of the art?
It was very readable. Most of the characters looked good.
It's a great compliment for comic book artists that it's very readable.
I think that is actually. I think
it's
there is.
interesting
What
that
I
he
mean is
went
it
to-
flows well.
It's
That's probably a more nice compliment.
What I'm saying is I like that, but it's like funny that you went to that first. I know that if I had asked you about like an artist like Francesco Francavilla from last week, you would not go to readable first. You'd go,
no.
His work was stunning, which is not where Chris is taking Jim Toe, unfortunately. But very readable, which is a solid compliment for comic books.
Yeah, his art didn't detract from the story. I didn't think it looked bad. I thought it looked very standard.
Yeah, it was very standard, especially for Marvel comics.
Yeah.
You've seen Javier Garron's art before?
It looked like if you took all the fun out of Javier Garron's art. I think Javier Garron they're very similar, but I like Garron more.
Yeah. Javier, he's got, I'd say that Javier's got a bit of a shonen style to his stuff. He's got some, like, maybe Japanese...
Some bombast.
Yeah, some bombastic.
Some curviness, maybe.
Maybe even some Kirby, some manga influence going on there. Javier Garron is also from overseas, so I'd imagine that he gets introduced to a lot more different kinds of cultural art than us Americans do over here in Port U in New York. But yeah, in any case, so it's a self-contained crossover. The narrator changes every issue.
On the narrator, I thought the narration was very repetitive for the first half until we get to the end of the letter. He kind of just kept saying the same things over and over again. This is a pet peeve and not something I will complain about Aaron's writing specifically. I hate the style of writing two characters interacting where they refer to each other as, like, that character with an S, like Steve's, or Go Carols! I think it's so silly. It's not wrong, but I just never have... I think it's so cheesy. It's not something you can write out. I would try if I was writing a comic like this. I just think it's dumb.
The alternatives to the Carols is the Carol Corpse, which...
is equally stupid,
it's
but...
pretty dumb, too, honestly. It's just a rip on the Green Lantern Corpse. Which makes sense in continuity, but, like, the alliteration there is not worth...
I've always hated that, though. So that's not something I didn't let detract my enjoyment of this issue. It's just something that bugs me every time I read it.
So whereas Chris doesn't always appreciate Jason Aaron's writing, I do appreciate his writing. And I have a quote here that I took straight from the book.
Okay.
There is one of the characters is talking about, I think it's Nerd Steve, the narration. He's talking about how long he's been in this battle, and it's his first battle, and like he's new to this whole thing. And he tries to take a moment to like take it all in, but he doesn't have the opportunity to that often because he's in the middle of a war. One of the things he says is they don't seem to eat or sleep or do anything other than Doom, which I thought was hilarious because, well, first and foremost, I'm a big Doom fan, and second of all, it's pretty accurate. Dr. Doom's a crazy dude, and he's not, if he's got a mission to do, you're not going to see him taking breaks. You think he's going to take his 15 when he's at work? He ain't taking no 15, man. He's doing his thing. He's out there menacing like an unfathomable amount of Avengers. Literal, like, we have no numbers for how many people are on this battlefield. And he's doing fine. He's doing fine. So I thought that quote was pretty good. Did you pull any quotes from there?
No.
So, Mike, I'm going to start complaining about this book now, probably.
Okay.
So this was my pick for the week. Chris doesn't really usually read this book for specific reasons. It's just not up his alley. I was going to say that in five pages we finally find out that it's Steve Rogers doing all of the talking and the narration and stuff. But the letterer, I don't know if it's the letterer or it's the editor or who chose it. The narration box is red and white. And to my knowledge, one of the first things he says is he's writing to somebody else. Nobody in particular, but he's writing to somebody else. And this is like, the narration is a letter that he reveals at the end of the issue that the letter's to go to someone. And one of the things that Jason Aaron has made pretty consistent in this run is that Robbie Reyes has a brother that he's left on Earth, and he's going to become the All Rider, which means that he might stop being Robbie Reyes, and he doesn't want to leave his brother untaken care of. So it's very up Robbie Reyes' like character to be writing a letter to his brother before the All Rider goes and kills himself trying to defeat Dr. Doom, right? So for 5 pages of this comic book, I'm reading Robbie Reyes as the narrator. And then I find out it's Nerd Steve, which is like polarizing of a different character altogether. So that was badly executed. You could have chose red, white, and blue. You could have done that thing where like there's a little logo in the corner so I know who I'm reading of. That's one of my biggest complaints on this book is Jason Aaron never does that. He'll narration box this whole thing, and you won't know who the person talking is until like page 5 or 6 or something like that. It's a little aggravating.
Yeah, and pointless.
Yeah.
There is sometimes times where like a questionable narrator adds to like the mystery of the story or what they're building to. In this case, it doesn't. It just
Gimmicky.
Yeah.
Gimmicky. That's not cool, man.
Gimmicky and pointless. Like it doesn't. You don't learn anything by finding out it's Nerd Steve. It's not a reveal. It's just he kept you in the dark for too long for no reason.
And Jason Aaron's trying to he's trying to really pour it on in this one and make us feel for Nerd Steve, and it doesn't work at all. And the reason for it is a couple issues ago, I think it was Avengers Forever 13 or 12. He picks up a Mjolnir, and there's a bunch of Mjolnirs. This is a long story, and but he picks up a Mjolnir, and he feels. And Nerd Steve was not ready when he was stuck in that room with the other Steve Rogers when they were training him issues ago. He was not ready to go and fight whatever was going to get them out of the room. So he was all nerdy and quiet and reserved. And then they got him out of that room. They started training all these Steve Rogers and stuff. And he turned out to be one of the more braver Steve Rogers that we see. And you could say that all Steve Rogers are probably about the same level of brave. They just need to channel it. So you see Nerd Steve go from Nerd Steve to I'm ready to get onto a battlefield to picking up a Mjolnir to I am now handling this Mjolnir. Like in this issue, he's handling Mjolnir. He's got his shield. He's taking names. He's kicking butt for like 5 pages or so.
Yeah.
And then he gets murked.
And I didn't know by who.
It's nobody. It's probably a Mephisto. Or it could have been anybody. It could have been a Doom. There are too many characters to keep track of that kind of thing, unfortunately. But there's no emotional attachment because you make him feel good, you give him this hammer, you make him seem like he's going to be effective and he's going to matter, and then you kill him 4 or 5 pages later to do what, Chris? What do they do with that character, more or less?
Motivate another Steve Rogers.
What's the point of that? You already have a decent Steve Rogers who's this little nerd boy, associated to a lot of people reading comics, I'd even imagine, gets to pick up a damn hammer of Thor, gets to be this awesome dude, and you kill him off.
And who you give it to is almost the same character. It's just the same guy, but he's a little husky.
There's no emotional attachment here. You did a bad job, Jason Aaron. I'm sorry to deliver it. It is what it is. Continuing on. There was this line. So there's this point where Namor is fighting Loki, and I have here in my notes it literally says, "What a joke," because Namor is he takes himself way too seriously. He's also he believes his own hype. He's one of those guys. You know, he's the DJ Khaled of Marvel Universe, right? He'll go and he'll make you look good, but he's gonna make himself look even better. And so he's talking down to Avengers Prime, a Loki, the greatest Loki of all Lokis. And you see in the prior issue, and in some in this issue, Loki's ability, and it's just a joke. Like, there's no way that Namor is going to hold his own against somebody of that. Like, imagine 50 Doctor Strangers, like, power levels compiled into one human being with the menace and trickery of Loki, the god of mischief, you know, and then I don't know, 100 million years of experience. And then you got Namor, who's probably like 65, looks about 35, and it's all that fish goo. I don't know what they keep you young. And he's threatening this like million-year-old god man with the powers of all the Sorcerer Supremes and universes, and it's just a joke. It's just not easy to take. But he does say, he tells Doom, I will wade in your innards. Which is pretty metal. I really like that line.
Yeah.
Those of you who don't know, wading is like kind of like walking through water at about like knee height or ankle height or so.
Yeah.
About knee height. And so he's trying to tell Doom that he's just going to like walk through his watery innards by the time he's done with it. Oh man, that was cool. So, there are small things in this book that I really do appreciate. And I think the book was pretty solid. For the most part, the thing that he fell short on was the whole Steve Rogers thing, and that's what guides you through the issues. This narration box that's going through Nerd Steve. You got anything to add to that, Chris?
No. This issue was fine.
There's this part. I'm hoping that you can give me some background on actually. Namor punches either Doom or Loki, and he says "Imperious Rex."
Yeah, that's like his thing.
Is this like a catchphrase?
I've never understood. It's like, I think it's like a motto for him and like the Atlanteans. Yeah.
Okay, it's a catchphrase. That was stupid, and it's a reference to like people who were reading this book for Namor. That's almost a zero number. I'm sure Namor has not been a consistent character in the book. Nobody's picking this book up for Namor.
You know what? Actually, talking about
it's a whole splash page too, by the way, that he wastes on that Imperious Rex thing.
By the way, talking about that, one of the things I did think was cool. So the mindless horde of dooms is like a fine idea, but I just never have liked villains like. You don't get to know them at all. They're just kind of mindless drones. It's fodder. It's fodder villains, kind of though. We know the Doom Avengers Prime is interesting because he's like having conversations. Like these dooms, they don't taunt anyone. They're drones, which is fine, but it's kind of a waste of having a bunch of dooms to not have them be more interactive with these characters. But I liked the big planet Doom that. The two phoenixes like fly through, and then all his blood, which is molten lava, pours out. That was a cool scene. That was metal as hell. Yeah. That was my favorite part of the issue. I thought that was cool.
I'm going to defend Jason Aaron real quick. We are on like 14 issues of Avengers Forever, 68 issues of Avengers, almost 100 issues of Avengers he's done. There's been a lot of Doom stuff. He's delivered who Doom is through this run, for sure. It's not in this issue at all. Chris is totally right. You get maybe like less than a paragraph out of Doom himself in the issue, and the Dooms, the Dooms that are not Doom bots, but more or less mindless Dooms.
Yeah.
And also, the reason why they don't talk much, 75% of them had their tongue cut out by themselves. That was a portion of joining Doom's army, or more accurately, being forced into slavery for this Doom. Is you had to cut out your own tongue. Because Dr. Dooms are sorcerers supremes for the most part. If they don't have a tongue, they can't cast any spells. They're not going to be a problem for the main Doom. So that was one of the things. And there was a whole issue where he drives this Doom thing crazy and really sells that point across. So there was a purpose to that issue way back. But so he's delivered who Doom is, but he doesn't do that much in this comic. So I can see where somebody who picks this issue out of nowhere and goes, this is wacky, crazy crap, and I don't really know what the background of this. What's the motivation of Doom right now other than he's Doom, right? There's none of that in the comic, but I think that's because Jason Aaron was, and he doesn't need to, he doesn't need to do
I mean, this is part 7 of an event. It's not even like a random issue of Avengers Forever. They make it very clear you're going to be lost if you read this. I just don't have the context.
So the only last note that I got is, did you catch the reference on the very last page to another older comic book?
No. I don't.
The very last page is a splash page that I probably have pulled up right now about here. And it's a page of Mephisto doing like a pose. That's a direct rip from the original Avengers 57 as Vision in red doing the same pose. Sounds like Chris didn't read that issue of Avengers, nor did I. So we have no idea what that's supposed to imply for the issue coming. I'm sure it does imply something if we were like Avengers fans, but to be honest, we're not for the most part. We're not disliking Avengers either. We're just Avengers is not one of those books that we normally be picking up. I just happen to be picking these books up because they've been pretty good for about 50 issues or so. And I respect it I respect a comic book run when it's one writer doing one thing, delivering one story, concentrating on that, and not letting anybody else come in and do something different. And Jason Aaron's been doing a pretty good job of that. He's very consistent with getting his story across, even if he is inconsistent in the actual storytelling of it. You got anything to add?
No.
All right, moving on.
All right.
We're going to do Batman Beyond the White Knight. Again, we have the same covers because the B cover was a Greg Capullo cover, but it was not this. It was like Greg Capullo drawing the White Knight Joker on a motorcycle with Batman driving. It was cute.
I thought it was cool.
It was cool, but
This is like a dope movie poster type thing. Good composition.
I'm not one to say that I prefer Sean Murphy over Greg Capullo. I'd probably say that's a 50-50 rate right there.
Uh-huh.
But in this case, it's his book, it's his universe, it's his characters. I'm going to have to pick up that normal cover. And, man, this cover is crazy. That's like my third note before we get into the other stuff. Yeah, you're right. It looks like a movie poster.
Yeah.
And Sean Murphy's been delivering basically this level of covers almost every issue. Right. I wanted to so Sean Murphy's writing, drawing, and inking, and he's doing everything but colors, to my knowledge.
Neo Future lends itself to good backgrounds. You have there's a great tradition with Akira and Ghost in the Shell of these crazy Neo Future backgrounds. If you're gonna jump forward this much, it's probably because the setting is more interesting to a person like Sean Murphy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of what sells the appeal of this book is Neo Gotham.
Yeah, big design.
Yeah.
Big design, and he really uses it. One of my first notes is figure work on the background characters. I think his background character figure work is some of the best I've seen ever.
Talking about the story in this book, Murphy has a lot to juggle from the onset of creating the series, because he has to make a sequel to White Knight, which has to follow up on several storylines he set up. And on top of that, he has to infuse Batman Beyond into it and tie all that together. So for 8 issues, the first 2 White Knight books are rock simple for the most part. I'm not saying they're not well written, but they just have very easy plots.
He got to do what he wanted with the first one. He got to do what he wanted more or less with the second one. He brought in a little bit more.
I'm not saying he doesn't get to do what he wants with this one. I'm just saying
but he's got
he has a lot more on his plate
mm-hmm.
in the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with this final issue, we did a pretty good job wrapping it all up.
Yeah, so with White Knight, when you go and do an Elseworlds Batman book, you can more or less do whatever you want with a character. So you're not really set by any standards other than Batman. That's your parameters. It's Batman. And Batman's character has been out since 1939 or so. So those really aren't parameters. So with White Knight, the original White Knight, more or less do whatever he wants. In the second installment, he brings in more Batman characters, Azrael, and a couple others, and he wants to. So now what he's doing is he's setting himself some more parameters, right? He probably is going to try and deliver something close to the origin of Azrael, and he does in a White Knight situation.
Yeah.
So he's got to deliver Azrael. He owes that to the people that know what Azrael is, knows what the background of Azrael is and stuff. And then the third installment was Harley Quinn's kind of one-shot. That one's, I think, more similar to the first installment because, again, your parameters are now Harley Quinn. Less Batman, even. Harley Quinn doesn't have many parameters. You can do a lot with that character, almost whatever you want with that character, because she's one of those chaotic neutral characters, usually. Now, Sean Murphy writes her as, chaotic good, I'd argue.
Yeah.
But she can still do whatever. So that Harley Quinn book was, I'd say, 75% original story. There was next to nothing that he was pulling from outside of the same stuff he'd been pulling from for the past 2 things. What Chris is really saying with this next one, he threw a whole bunch of parameters at himself. He threw Batman Beyond. He threw Terry McGinnis. He threw the first season of Batman Beyond Terry McGinnis and almost nothing else.
Yeah.
He's throwing down Old Man Bruce, which then brings in Dark Knight Returns. He's throwing in all of the Batman animated series that he's been sourcing from. He's got to bring in all the stuff that he's been sourcing from in his own books. This guy's got 8 issues to deliver all of these things, and you have to be a master craftsman to truly not only pay homage but do these things properly so that it doesn't feel like you are just paying homage, you're just rehashing the stuff over and over and over again. and I agree with Chris. I think he does pull it out. And my first note is I have my expectations are pretty high because things have to come together in this issue. He doesn't have any other room to do anything else. And I'd say that he's been doing 7 issues of building. Yeah. Maybe that seventh issue, you can feel a turning point, but it's very unusual with comics. I'd say comics in an 8-issue run, it's usually issue 6 that's really the turning point. And then the last 2 issues are, let's finish this up. He didn't do that. He turning pointed in the second to last issue, which is, like, that's scary in a way for both the reader and I'd imagine the artist who's drawing this, or the writer who's drawing this book, because you got to pull out a lot in this last issue. And he does, before we get into the story, you flip this thing open, you know, it's cool. I don't remember what's on, maybe an ad on the back cover page. But I
think it's the title page, but it has like this really nice graphic design of Terry McGinnis.
That's page 1. It's not on the back of the cover.
Sorry.
So on page 1, we got the credits page. And I don't normally talk about a credits page in a comic book, but I'm going to talk about this one because there's a Superman credit on that page. And so there's been no outside Batman stuff. Harley Quinn is the most outside Batman stuff that they've done in any of these White Knight series. So you crack this open, and if you didn't get one of those variant covers that has Superman on the cover, you crack this open, and you look at the title page, and you see them giving credit to Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, and it makes you wonder, even before you start the comic, why is this here? Because White Knight is such a Batman Elseworld book that I haven't thought about Superman in the entirety of these comics.
I didn't think I had to. I could have sworn. I guess this is just my own assumption. I always just thought he existed and we just didn't talk about it.
Which is a common thing with the Batman animated series.
Yeah.
Because in the Batman animated series, they don't mention Superman at all. They do mention
They
Metropolis.
allude to him.
I don't remember that.
Twice.
Maybe once they get to like the season where they start doing the Batman Superman adventures. But the first 3 seasons of Batman animated series, they mention Metropolis a couple times. That's about it. There's no Boy Scout flying around over there yet. Or maybe there is, and it's just not on Batman's radar because he's busy doing Gotham stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what John Murphy's doing here. Is the same thing. He might be over there, but you know, what is that relevant to what Bruce and Gotham is doing, right? So we'll get into that Superman thing later.
Sure.
Let's open up with a little summary of the issue. You're better at summaries. You want to summarize it?
Okay. Batman and the whole Bat family at this point, they're waging like different ground assaults on this tower, Powers building.
Power Tower.
Batman, Harley Quinn, and like an artificial intelligence of Jack Napier are in the Batmobile on the ground.
Hologram AI.
Yeah. Dick and Jason are in a Batplane above. The GCPD, which includes Barbara Gordon and Duke. No. Duke is in like a Robin type outfit with Jason's Robin.
So let's break down some characters real quick.
There's a lot of like
Bruce, Terry, Barbara, Harley, Joker AI hologram, Jackie, their daughter. Bryce is somewhere not in this issue, basically. Dick, Jason, Duke. What's her name? What's the Robin's name?
I don't know. It's just
we
Robin.
both forgot it. They don't say her name once in this issue, so in our defense, that was like an issue or 2 ago that we even remember her name. She's referred to as Robin for the past 2 issues. There's another Robin. Ace, the Bat Hound, because he totally makes a couple appearances in here. And am I missing somebody? There's a Detective Flint that's working for Derek Powers. And then there's the GTO that are helping out Barbara. There's the FBI that are helping out Barbara. And there's the actual police department that are helping out Barbara. So Barbara's got like 3 forms of various SWAT team police agencies that are helping her out. But yes, they've split up into squadrons. They're going to attack the Powers Tower.
Okay. So once they get in, Dick and Jason are kind of taken down early on. And
Constantly squabbling.
Yes.
Constantly squabbling. Even though they said they'd be fine in the prior issue and working together, they weren't. They crashed the damn Batmobile into Powers Tower.
Yeah. And there's a bit where they both I think they're talking not about them, the Robin that's on the ground, but they both answer to Robin and argue about who they were talking about when it was probably neither of them.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of cute.
Yeah, there are two Robins. Neither of them are Nightwing or Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Or rather, Dick and Jason Todd. It's Duke
But
Thomas.
they both argue about who they're talking about.
It's pretty. I don't think it's meant to feel like it's annoying because I was laughing through the entirety.
No, I thought it was cute.
It was really funny.
They have good banter. I think
later good banter.
Yeah, it's nice to see Jason interact with these characters because we've kind of known he's been around for a while, but he's been on the fringes of this story and the prior story.
Yeah.
It's cool to see him assimilate in. I think it's very weird that it's not weird that this Jason uses guns. He's an Afghan vet, we learn. It is weird how little anyone really cares. There's like one line where Dick is like, shouldn't you not be using guns? Isn't that like the whole point of our mission and code? And Bruce is like, he's right, we'll talk about it later.
And you know the reason...
So they just completely gloss over it.
And the reason they put that in there, too, is I know Sean Murphy is going and saying, I got to put something that's going to acknowledge this in here, or else somebody's going to complain about it.
Yeah.
Because he just, unfortunately, hasn't had... It's 8 issues. Again, 8 issues ain't much. And these aren't 25...
And Bruce has been on the fringes of everyone the whole story.
So they're in Powers Tower, and everybody's in Powers Tower now. They've all made it into there. And AI Joker's been helping everybody. He's in each of the Batmobiles. He's guiding things. He's kind of like the Oracle of the situation in a way.
Uh-huh.
And he's still super annoying, and they've definitely poured that on for the past 8 issues, and he doesn't get any less annoying in this issue. And even to the characters in the book, he's super annoying.
Yeah.
And the only person that's ever like happy to see him is seemingly Harley. And at the end of the issue, Bruce starts to like somehow get acclimated to his appearance in his life. Right before we think that the AI Joker disappears for a while. So anyway, Powers has got this giant plan. He's got a bunch of bat mechs, basically, that's in tow to destroy whoever's going up against him. And I think Powers was trying to develop an army of bat mechs, basically, that can like go and take care of like policing the world and stuff.
Yep.
He had a very altruistic, is that the word I'm looking for?
Yep.
Kind of look on the world. He's a lot like Lex Luthor and Ra's al Ghul. He wants to. He's trying to be this good guy in the worst possible way. And he's a super genius, or at least that's what they deliver here in White Knight. And Bruce isn't going to take it. He's not. Bruce has an idea of how to do this his way, and it's going to take a lot more time. But Bruce doesn't want to just force things upon people because that's not the way that people should be treated.
Right.
So he's got to take down Powers, and that's the whole motivation there. And that's why they're in this Powers Tower. That's why they're taking down Powers. And Bruce doesn't do a lot of the taking down of Derek Powers. Terry and the Joker AI go to hunt for Powers while Bruce does basically some micromanagement, I'd say, of what's happening in the tower, giving people directives and kicking ass.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite parts of this last issue is that scene where the Joker AI is like, all right, Powers is not a threat anymore. Terry, I'm going to leave him to you. And Joker AI goes to look for his daughter, Jackie, somewhere in Powers Tower. And there's this great page. It's not a splash page, but a good portion of it, maybe like a quarter of the page, is dedicated to a figure of Terry, looking really dark, standing over the body of Derek Powers. Then they have this conversation where Derek is trying to encourage Terry to kill him because Derek's under the impression that he's dead already. He's like cancer-ridden. He's got the like green stuff coming out of him, just like in the Batman Beyond TV show. And Terry opts out. In fact, he opts out so hard, I don't even think he gives him a punch. He just like stares at this dude like, you're crap. You're not worth my time. I ain't putting any effort into this. I'm gonna walk away, and I don't need to listen to you because I'm Batman. And there's this like little lettering at the bottom of the page that has
it's like the Batman Beyond
straight up ripped from the Batman Beyond logo. And that brings me to another one of my points: is this issue is filled with fanfare. There is so much fanfare in this issue.
Yeah.
It's almost seamless, though. The only way you're going to pick up on the fanfare in this issue is if you're being targeted, which we're totally both being targeted in this issue. Did you pick up on any fanfare?
Oh, yeah. They ride up in the 89 mobile. The Joker's constantly talking about the tumbler. and how he likes the Tumblr for some reason.
Or how
I
about
think that's kind of funny.
Or how about the Joker as the audience?
Sure.
There's like 3. The last book has a big moment. In issue 7, they're all doing like this superhero walk to the mission. And Joker almost breaks the 4th wall and says, "Superhero walk time! This is awesome!" And he's losing his stuff. And then in this issue, he does that like 2 more times. He does that like, I think, I don't remember, they're fighting or something, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm fighting alongside the Bat family. This is great," you know. And he's nerding out. Mostly because we're nerding out a little bit.
Right.
So it's kind of cool that Sean Murphy used the Joker as the audience because it works. It works. And
He's been building up since the first White Knight. There's that, I think the most iconic image of White Knight is the Joker. He's on his desk. He's got his head like in his hair. He's freaking out. And around him is the basically animated series memorabilia. He's just surrounded by Batman toys.
Yeah, toys. So that's pretty cool. There's another fanfare moment. Bruce goes and puts on the Batman mask, the cowl, and he finally realizes that he's been missing a portion of Batman throughout the entirety of the series, and for some reason all he has to do is put on the mask, and it puts him right back into that Batman mood, and we get about a page of fanfare at him.
I like that he reveals the yellow logo, too.
And then Joker loses his crap when he reveals that's how we know that Sean Murphy does an okay job of showing that he's scratching this stuff off.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced if there wasn't a blurb in the background where the Joker says, "Oh, he's revealing the logo, too," I might not have caught that. I might have just, thought that was, he was holding his hand here for some reason or something like that. But totally another fanfare moment, 2 fanfare moments in a row. Puts on the cowl, undoes the yellow sign there, and right before he starts kicking butt, there's this big splash page. I think I wrote it down as page 15 or so, maybe even earlier than that, where it's just Bruce, and there is no background. It's just Bruce, and he's finally in this Batman outfit, and these yellows on his outfit are popping like crazy. Dave Stewart, again, doing some great colors. And I'm going to complain about this splash page now. So they're in Powers Tower. If you're inside, there's lots of light. Things are lit up. You can imagine it's an industrial type place, so the lights are going to be bright. It's the type of place where if you're going to try on clothes, you ain't going to look good in them because they're going to show you all the crevices and stuff. So they do the splash page when he puts on the mask, and it's dark. There's literally nothing in the background. It's all scratch mark, pencil, pen and pen, ink, scratch marks and stuff. And you're trying to, and the whole point is you're focusing on Bruce, which is cool. It's a cool splash page. The figure work is great. Everything is great about it, except for the background. So, you want to close out the book there? Close out our summary?
Yeah. So they take down Powers. The GTO arrests him shortly after Terry decides not to kill him. Because he's Batman. It's not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce is met by someone from the FBI, and they're like, "We really should arrest you. You did technically break out of jail, and you still have to pay for your crimes for a couple more years, but
you're a criminal."
Derek Powers was paranoid and was worried about all these things, but he wasn't entirely wrong because there is this guy in Metropolis that we need you to help us with because we have no idea what to do about this guy, and it's Superman. That's what we were talking about at the beginning. They have to credit, even if the logo, I think, is in the comic, they have to credit Siegel and Schuster. It does kind of spoil the surprise, but I'd rather they get the credit.
It doesn't spoil us, but the last page is Superman. No. If it ain't the last page, it's the second to last page.
It is the last page. It's the final splash page.
It's one big splash page that's way better than the splash page that came earlier in the book.
I think Batman looks kind of funny in it,
it's Superman, and he's soaring through the sky, and he doesn't look a day over 19.
Yeah.
And
he looks young.
So
especially young.
A couple things to tackle before we tackle this last 2 pages. There's a throwaway gag in there. One of the pages where Jack Napier comes up on a heads-up display, and it says J. Napier, a.k.a. Batman's BFF. And again, he's the Oracle. He's the guy controlling all of the gadgets and stuff. So he could write his own little AKA underneath his little thing, and he does. So that was a throwaway gag. It's literally one line in art, and if you don't see it, then you're not going to see it. But it was pretty funny. What do you think about Duke Thomas's inclusion in the entirety of the White Knight series?
I think I like what he does with Duke Thomas. It's not really Duke Thomas. It's not, or not like Snyder's Duke Thomas. It almost always has read to me like he had a character, like a black character from like the lower end of Gotham who could help out Jack Napier, and someone at DC told him, hey, we have this character Duke Thomas, make it Duke Thomas. And now that he has been writing Duke Thomas for all these years, he's finally going back to like, oh, what does this character actually do? Oh, he was Robin, so he makes him Robin by the end of this book. Even though he's not Robin anymore, but I think probably for the best. I think Signal is like, I think his costume's kind of so I kind of think it's more fun that he just makes him Robin, and he makes him Bruce's Robin because the other Robin is Jason's Robin specifically.
So, Weekly Wednesday Warriors, I'm going to disagree with Chris Potter real quick.
Okay.
Only a little bit, though. I think Sean Murphy is including Duke Thomas because Sean Murphy is paying homage to all the things that he likes in Batman. And, unfortunately, Batman is fairly famous for being about white people, almost primarily. Even if you look at his rogues gallery, which, unfortunately, back in, like, the 60s and 70s, it would not be uncommon to make a black man the villain. These days, everybody should be heroes. Everybody should be villains. There should be no degree of separation at all. Yeah. And so I'm sure Sean Murphy, on some level, you're right. I'm sure maybe even editorial came to him and said, look, we need some damn culture in this comic. What can you do for us?
I'm not saying they forced him to put Duke Thomas in. I think he had the same character, black man, already in the story, and they just told him, make a Duke, instead of whatever original character he came up with.
And so the reason why I think that that's not the case completely, I still think it was partially an editorial, but I think 75% Sean is he did some work with Scott Snyder over the course of many years, up to and including a few side stories during the New 52 run. I'm thinking annual stuff and like maybe one actual book in that series. Whenever Greg Capullo was too tired to work, Scott Snyder would bring in his friends that he's worked with in indie comics, and Sean Murphy's one of those guys. So Sean Murphy's been around Scott for a long time. And again, me saying that, and we can see it throughout the entirety of the series, this dude literally pays homage to everything he loves about Batman.
Yeah.
I think he loves Scott Snyder. I think Sean Murphy wouldn't have a job without Scott Snyder, especially at DC Comics. I think this is his way of sort of saying thank you to Scott, and saying, Scott, you did something in Batman that nobody else has done before, and I'm going to use the stuff that you used because I appreciate what you've done, I appreciate your characters, appreciate what you've done for me, and I think this is an easy inclusion into what I'm doing anyway. So, Chris could be right. This could be a total editorial thing that he had a character in mind that he was going to just like the new Robin. The new Robin's a new character altogether. Yeah. He could have maybe wanted to do that way earlier with this character, but instead maybe editorial suggested Duke Thomas. Maybe Sean Murphy went, that's a great idea, right? Maybe it's both of them. Maybe it's a 50-50 thing. So, in any case, I think it's a good inclusion, especially since most of this is homage to the Batman animated series, and that's the one thing out of all of this stuff that he's paying direct homage to current continuity comic books. Ain't nobody that hasn't read Scott Snyder's run is going to know who Duke Thomas is. Because like Chris was saying, the Signal, who's what Duke Thomas's hero's name is kind of weak. So weak, so much that since Scott Snyder's been doing less DC work, he's nowhere to be found. The character has not been touched since Scott was working at DC, which is a serious downside because I like Duke Thomas. I'm not fond of the Signal, but I think he's got a purpose in Batman. And Sean Murphy apparently thinks so too, which is cool.
I think he elevates his character a little bit more too.
Yeah.
His usefulness to the story.
Yeah, like you said, making him Robin, and the way they did it was pretty good. And also, you say that the character doesn't seem like Duke Thomas that much. I'd like to say that I've read a lot of Duke Thomas stuff.
He's much older. That's really what I'm saying.
Which is not an odd change, because Sean does a lot of interesting
Everyone's
changes like
older.
that.
Anyway.
So making him older makes it so that you're not dealing with children all the time, and there's enough children in the book and flashbacks and stuff in the comic. And this is supposed to be an adult Batman story too. So you don't want to put too much kids to make your audience not be able to relate to the characters in the book. So making Duke Thomas as important a role as he has, like a police officer, a member of like a prime community member in the rougher parts of Gotham and stuff, is a phenomenal call to make him more weighty and have that background. And Duke Thomas in the New 52 run, he comes from that area. He comes from like a rough part of Gotham, and his parents get Jokerized, and he's got nobody to lean on. And they don't go into his parents in this, but he's alone. They don't deliver him like he's got a girlfriend or friends or anything. He's literally just this big, strong dude in his community that's there to help anybody and everybody out. And to me, that's what Duke Thomas is anyway. He's that guy who gives. Remember, We Are Robin? We Are Robin is him running around his community with a bunch of other kids acting like Robin and taking care of things while Batman wasn't around to do so. So, again, I think Sean Murphy might have even done his research in this point to try and deliver the character to the best of his ability within the confines of what he wanted to do with that character, you know?
Yeah.
So I know I mentioned earlier that the Joker got a little tiring. I really felt that way in this comic. I was really kind of tired of, like, he throws a lot of jokes that aren't funny out there. Not like comedian jokes, but like little pokes and jabs at like various stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of like emotional things going on with the Joker and his ties to Bruce and his ties to Harley and ties to Jackie, and I find it distracting. I find it a little annoying.
I think it mostly falls flat too because Jack never gets serious enough for the weight to really affect us. He doesn't stop being jovial even when he's gonna die. Presumably, he's as far as all our characters know, he destroyed himself to defeat Powers, and he was saying goodbye to the only child he hadn't met yet. And he doesn't stop being jovial, fun Joker.
He's very repetitive, too. If you go and read all the other White Knight books, you get the stuff that you get all that Joker emotion and Joker story and background. And you even get it earlier in this comic when he says his goodbyes to Harley in a sort of weird way. And in the Harley comic, too, there's a lot of Joker stuff that gets done, even though the character isn't around. And so it becomes it's probably the only thing in this book that you literally have to work through. And it starts out in issue 1 when you're like, all right, they haven't bothered they haven't really bothered introducing almost anybody in the first issue except for the Joker and Bruce. And a little bit of Terry, very little bit of Terry in that first issue. So, you know the Joker ain't going anywhere anytime soon. And if you know Batman, like I do and Chris does, there's a movie called Return of the Joker. It's a Batman Beyond movie. And he's the prime character in that movie. And he's throughout the entire movie. And this is a direct homage to the movie from issue 1. Because he's like inside of Bruce's brain. So you know, if Sean Murphy's paying homage properly, and you know he's gonna keep this character around for the entirety of this thing. And like I said, it just gets a little tiring. That's all I'm going to say about that. On page 12, I'm putting up a page over here now. There's the Robin boys are going back and forth on a point system for beating up bad guys. I don't know about you, but I love that stuff because that's a Robin trope to me. I've seen that before many times, and the way it's very talking down to the villains because they're just associating them to a point system and kicking butt.
Right.
But it's really funny, man, and it probably doesn't make the villains feel very good about what they're doing either, I'd imagine. So in a way, they deserve that kind of a treatment. But it brings you back you get one moment, basically, in this whole book where Dick and Jason are finally on equal terms, and even though they're on equal terms, they're still fighting, but it's brothers fighting instead of what we've been dealing with for the past 7 issues or what have you.
And also, it's really refreshing because of how they're treating Jason currently, or how they've always treated Jason in Batman comics. He doesn't really get to do stuff like this. He doesn't get to have fun like that most of the time.
No. He's usually the serious one. Who's
the serious one, or downright a villain, almost. Especially when he's first introduced. Like, those early Nightwing Red Hood appearances, they're nothing like this. I think it's really fun that we get to have, at least in this Elseworlds, little back and forth between the two where they're on good terms. Tom Taylor can do that with the Nightwing annual, but Red Hood was also working through his own stuff in that.
I find it interesting, too, off of what you're just talking about, that I feel like both of those Robin boys have flip-flopped between somewhat bad guys, somewhat good guys in this whole series.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't say that Jason Todd's been a bad guy, but he's not doing things properly. And I'd say the same thing about Dick through the series. Dick is this police officer that doesn't give a shit about what Bruce is doing, doesn't even give him the time of day. And Jason's doing the same thing in a different way. He's not a police officer. He's running around as Red Hood, but he's not doing anything that Bruce has told them to. You know, both of these guys are utilizing their training that they've learned from probably mostly Bruce, the detective work and all that kind of stuff. But they're not giving Bruce any credit. They're calling him some level of monster. They ruined their lives and stuff of that nature. And they definitely come around by the end of this book to realize that, yeah, Bruce has done some bad stuff, but he's a human like the rest of us, and everybody makes mistakes, you know? So Sean Murphy does a pretty good job of juggling these characters, making you feel for those characters specifically, which is cool. Especially in the Barbara, Dick Grayson moments.
Yeah.
Those are really cool. And I don't know if it's this issue or the last issue. You finally find out they have a kid running around or something. Or maybe that was a couple issues ago. Kid's name is Jim, or Jimmy rather, which is inconsistent with every version of Dick Grayson's kid ever. So Sean didn't care to look at any version of Dick Grayson.
No, but it makes sense for this universe specifically.
Right, because Barbara's dad's name is Jim, and so they're going to name, because for some reason Dick is going to fold when the name thing comes around. He's just going to go, yeah, Babs, we can name him Jimmy after your dad. So that went down, which is fine. I wanted to compliment Sean Murphy on the heads-up display paneling. I thought that those were really cool moments. And I have a note in here that literally just says, car porn?
Yeah.
Would you expand on that, Chris?
Sean Gordon Murphy loves cars. And almost as much as his figure work, unlike almost every other comic artist, he puts a lot of time into those cars, making them look good, and making them look good moving. That's one thing that I think is inconsistent with even great comic artists. Cars, even if they can draw a car still, sometimes they can't draw a good car moving. Sean Gordon Murphy can draw cars
flying
effortlessly
through the air, and they look fine. Which is not where you put cars, but he figures it out. The car even transforms.
Have you seen his model of that, the Batwing? Because he built a Batwing for reference.
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't he?
Out of Gundam parts.
That's why my note is literally car porn. This guy loves cars probably more than he loves Batman. Just give this guy a car magazine. I don't know why he's working in comics. Alright, one of the other art-related notes I have is I really like Jackie's design. Yeah. And she's a simple character. She's not wearing a costume. It's all fashion clothes.
Yeah.
And Sean Murphy usually has relatively simple character designs, and I think he does that on purpose because he knows in comics you're going to draw these people a lot.
Yeah.
Jackie's one of the more complicated-looking designs. And again, me complimenting his background figure work, in all the background shots where she's in the background, she's still got the coat, she's still got the colors on the coat, she's got, most of her, the Batman shirt and everything, you can see all of her stuff, and even her makeup looks good in some of the scenes and panels and stuff.
Yeah.
You got anything to add to that?
Just that it makes sense, because at the end of this issue we learn she and Bryce are going to have to carry their own series, so I think probably they put... It might not have even been Murphy who designed this character. It might have been the artist of Generation Joker. Very unlikely still, but that character's going to have to carry their own series, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that Harley Quinn hates how she looks, probably because she looks like the Neo Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of sourness in her mother there.
Yeah.
And we don't really have too much background that's given to us on that one, but we can allude a few things.
I think we're supposed to infer it's because of other Harley Quinn Neo Joker from the previous two White Knights.
Alright, so let's tackle these last 2 pages that Chris did talk about.
Okay.
I want to add a whole lot of detail. So, they finish all of the White Knight stuff, Batman Beyond stuff, basically. 2 pages left in the book. And you don't know what to expect because literally everything is done. They don't have to close out any storylines, really. The only thing that's left a little bit open is, where's Bryce? What's his inclusion in this series? Why was he even a part of this series, right? Who's Joker and Harley's son. And so, I'll say this is only a little ham-fisted, but it doesn't feel ham-fisted because it's such a dang feel-good moment in comics and a comeuppance of you reading this whole series and hoping it's going to go a certain direction. And that direction is going to tie back to Sean Murphy continuing to homage the things he loves in both comics and animation. And again, I want to mention a couple things. He's got nods to Batman animated series, including main characters like Superman. There's a poster in the background of the 7th book of Zatara. I don't know if you caught that. There's been next to no influence from other superheroes in the DC Universe continuity within this Elseworlds book. And that was the first one that I even saw. There was a scene where you had to be paying attention. There's one scene where Dick Grayson is crying and he's cradling an elephant, and there's plenty to look at that is not the background, but I'm looking in the background anyway, and it's at a circus, and in the background of the circus is a poster for Zatara, a magician. Presumably that tours with that circus on occasion. Right. Zatara is eventually a member of the Justice League under the Dr. Fate moniker. So he's a big character, and that's, again, him paying homage to the Batman animated series because Paul Dini and Bruce Timm did a couple episodes that involved Zatanna and her father, Zatara. So much so in the Batman animated series, they deliver some serious background that Batman wouldn't be the same character without the Batman animated series. Yep. So that was a really good little throw in the background. Again, him literally using every moment, every panel, every possible opportunity to homage the things that he cares about and thinks are important in the Batman continuity. So I have a lot of respect for this guy in that regard. But, it includes villains. He keeps mentioning, he'll mention, like, street numbers and stuff, and, every Batman person, writer will do that. They'll name some of the people that came before them as the street numbers and stuff. Another thing that he did that was interesting to homage people is he made Terry, his background is he's half Asian, half American, or rather, he's all American. He's got an Asian background in his DNA. And he did that because a big portion of the creative team of the Batman Beyond animated series were people from overseas creating this program for us here in America and stuff. Right. So he will literally homage anything he possibly can, from story beats from these things, the Return of the Joker thing, Duke Thomas. There's homages everywhere. This goes so far as to, at the end of the Batman animated series, towards the end, you get the Batman Superman cartoon, which was spent. Half of it was Batman stuff, half of it was Superman stuff. It's about an hour long with ads and stuff like that. And at the end, very last 2 pages, Bruce and everybody else in the Bat fam gets approached by what is the FBI, but they introduce themselves first and foremost. And there's only one person that talks, and it's Diana Prince of the FBI. She's wearing stars in her little earrings, and she's got this strong build. And what I like is she is not a white woman. She is of some darker color, definitely not Bruce's color. So Sean is trying to deliver what me and Chris are probably under the impression is Wonder Woman, as probably still an Amazonian woman that has come, and she is not white, which is great, because this book and Batman is filled with people that are mostly white. So to see some difference in that is awesome. And I like the way that Sean plays with the background of characters because it's appropriate. Because if you're on Themyscira, how white are you going to stay? It's like a paradise island in the Caribbean. Yeah. You're even if you're as white as me and Chris are, you ain't going to stay as white as me and Chris are. So it makes more sense that she'd have some sort of color to her skin, and she does, and I love it. And then in the background of those panels where she's talking to Bruce as an FBI agent, trying to tell him about something that's coming that Powers is trying to defend against, there's a character in the background that she labels as John Stewart, I believe. She might not even say his name. I think she does say his name now that I think about it. And I'll throw a page over here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And it's totally the Green Lantern. It's totally John Stewart, the Green Lantern, as an FBI. So now we're under the impression that if there is any level of Justice League, it's currently under the FBI. They're micromanaging what is to become the Justice League. But we also know that the Justice League doesn't form until we get Batman and Superman together. Right. And Batman is 65 or older, and Terry is going to end up being Batman. That's what the culmination of this was, is Bruce telling everybody that this is the next Batman, he deserves it. And the next page you flip after Diana tells Bruce that there's a problem and we might have to tackle this, and if you help the FBI, we'll let you serve your consider your sentence served. And the threat, you turn the page, is what Chris was saying earlier, is Superman, who doesn't look a day over 19, and he's flying through the air in a classic Superman pose, and it's beautiful stuff, and Bruce is shocked. And they say that the only thing they know about this boy in Kansas is that he is not from Kansas. Yeah. So that's the deliver that you get at the end of that, and that's also where the animated series goes towards the end of the animated series. You get the Justice League. And the Justice League starts out with them building the Justice League. It doesn't start out with the Justice League already existing. So that's what Sean's doing, is he's building the Justice League now. That's awesome. I'm excited. I'm super excited to see what Sean Murphy's Justice League looks like.
He does talk a little bit about it. Did you read the afterword?
I didn't read any of the afterword.
Okay.
You did?
I did. Yeah.
Go into it. Man.
He just says the book is going to be a Batman Superman World's Finest book, and then he was like, over the course of it, we're going to build the Justice League. That's about all he said. I didn't catch, by the way. That is so stupid of me that was Diana Prince. I think it was kind of late when I read this issue.
Now you're thinking about it, though.
Yeah.
Even without her saying it, like,
it makes
all
sense.
The stuff. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to that. The only thing that I wanted to mention about this book, in addition, is I have a note here that says parallels to Frank Miller's DC universe, and I thought that you could expand upon that a little bit because I'm sure you see some of the parallels that I'm seeing as well.
Yeah. Old Man Bruce. Building a relationship with Clark later in life.
What happens at the end of Dark Knight Returns?
Right, they have a duel. They have their iconic.
No, I mean the end of Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, he's building his with the mutant gang. He's building his new idea of Batman, or his better idea of Gotham,
which is similar to the way that Sean Murphy ends this, because we have a new Batman. We have a Gotham that's going to be under Bruce's control on some level, presumably.
We have all of these Bat family, Bat gang in the Dark Knight Returns.
Like he's building some level of an army, to keep things going in Gotham, keep things good. And he spent basically all of White Knight from issue 1 trying to turn Gotham back into the way that he wants Gotham to be, which is the same thing that he does in Dark Knight Returns, because it's all left his control for so many years. So I thought that those parallels were obvious in there so much. And again, Sean Murphy homaging the Batman stuff that he loves. He loves Frank Miller's stuff, and so does everybody else. So there's a lot of that going on. I would even say that there's more parallels in addition to the way that he's entering characters. The Justice League didn't come into Frank Miller's universe until outside of Superman.
Yeah.
Until way later. We got Superman pretty early, but it's that's because of the big thing that it's a Batman Superman. Batman Superman are kind of like, if they're not the dynamic duo, if Batman and Robin are the dynamic duo, then they're the best friends. They're the best super friends. They're world's finest. So that relationship is very well established in the Batman Dark Knight Returns. Isn't that well established now? But Chris read the afterword, and that's where he's going with it. Yeah. He's trying to establish this relationship because he also recognizes that this is super important, just like Frank Miller did when he was writing Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller's done a lot of other Batman stuff, including Batman Year One, where he laid some serious groundwork for the character. That's the same thing Sean Murphy's doing in the first White Knight book. He wants to tell you who this character is in his own universe. That's what Frank needed to do in his own universe as well, because it's not the same Batman that you get delivered in every other comic book.
Yeah.
There are probably even more parallels, I'm sure, that I'm not seeing in to Frank Miller's Batman work to Sean Murphy. Just the fact that they're both Elseworlds books, too. That both of these guys wanted to tackle Batman, but they couldn't do it in a main series properly because they wanted to do their Batman their way. So they went and did something else instead of just picking up the main continuity of Batman. And look at the success of both of these series are pretty big. You could argue that Frank Miller's is maybe a little less successful because people don't like that second installment that much. But then he brought on Brian Azzarello for the Master Race, and from the people that I've talked about, that gets reviewed pretty well.
Oh.
So you got some guys that are doing some similar stuff, and the reason for that is because they appreciate their stuff. And as a Batman fan, it's nice to see those things because I love it whenever I see somebody else throwing homage to somebody else that deserves that credit and tells you that this is where I'm pulling from. Go and read this stuff if you haven't, because if you like this stuff, you're going to like that other stuff, Moving on to last and certainly not least, maybe not most, we have Nightwing 101. We both got the same cover. Again, We're not paying DC an extra $1 unless we need to. And this is one of those situations where we were forced to. Nightwing has been $4 for all of Rebirth from issue 1. And
it was $3 actually at the start of Rebirth.
Yeah, it was bi-weekly, and it was $3. And Tim Seeley was writing it, and he was writing a bi-weekly comic, no problem. So all y'all people complaining about doing bi-weekly comics and you can't pump them out, you're lying. Get on Tim Seeley's level. But in any case, we're at Nightwing 101. And this is by Tom Taylor, who's probably my favorite writer in comics, and probably Chris's top 5, I'd have to imagine. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
There's a lot of writers in comics, so we'll put him in number 6 spot.
No, top 5 is fine. I was thinking about it, because I don't think I actually like that many writers more than Tom Taylor, but I think the 4 above Tom Taylor, I think there's a jump for me personally.
Chip Zdarsky, Chip, then his real name.
Zdarsky.
What's
Steve Murray.
Steve Murray, Scott Snyder, Tom Taylor. That's
Jonathan
his top
Hickman.
5. Yeah, Hickman 6. All right, so Tom Taylor's writing. Travis Moore is doing the main art duties, and Tamara Bonvillain, who's one of my favorite colorists in all of comics right now, who does the colors.
Are you sure?
Makes this.
She's not on the cover. The credits for the front page.
I am sure. Let's pull this out and show the viewers.
My bad.
So in any case, this is. I feel bad for Tom Taylor in a way with this book because he went and delivered such an amazing 100 that. It's in here somewhere. Travis Moore.
I think that's the variant.
Lucas.
Yeah, that's the variant cover of this.
Dude, all right. Tamara Bonvillain apparently did not. Who did the colors on this?
Travis
Adriano Lucas.
Oh,
No, Travis Moore is the artist. All right. The colorist on this book definitely deserves their time of day. Their last name is Lucas. Did a good job. Adriano Lucas. I thought it was Tamara Bonvillain. I guess Bonvillain does the colors on a variant cover.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got that mixed up. Anyway, okay, so issue 100 is the issue that comes before this. Issue 100 was very thick. It was almost 50 pages. It was like $8 or $7 or $8 or something like that. Had a whole bunch of covers. It's one of the only Nightwing issue 100s that there has ever been. Most of Nightwing has had other long runs. This would be, if not his longest run, his second longest run that they've ever done. It's also one of the only Rebirth titles still going. Batman's one of them.
Yep, hasn't restarted.
Batman and Nightwing, and is that it?
Okay. So there, you have to
Flash
take into
doesn't count. They renumbered.
Yes, Wonder Woman doesn't count because they renumbered it and restarted it.
I don't know.
Superman they've rebooted a couple times.
So without spending too much time thinking about DC's Rebirth story,
It's about Batman and Nightwing.
It's
basically that.
probably
If there's
that.
one more, there's one more.
And I'd like to say that how do you even do that with a character like Dick Grayson and Nightwing? Because he's not Batman. He's not Superman. He's not even the Flash. He's the Robin character, and he's not even Robin, which is probably a more known name than Nightwing. And still, this book Nightwing is
I
on
don't
issue
think
100
anymore, though, for the comic reading audience. Because I think because of things like the Arkham series and the animated series, Nightwing is just as synonymous with Batman among the people who would pick up a Batman comic.
Right, and that's why I didn't say among the comic reading audience.
Right.
I'm saying over the broad scope of things, Robin's a bigger name than Nightwing. Just the way it is. It's
Yeah.
Batman and Robin. It's not Batman and Nightwing. So to see a book like this sell as well as it's selling and going as far as it's going, you know the guys that are behind this book are doing some crazy, crazy good job. And I really can't say that enough. I reread that issue 100 last night in preparations for this show, and when I first read it, I think I was in tears like twice. Not because I was sad, but because there are so many feel-good moments in that book that it's like, wow, this guy, like the issue, I can't do too much on Nightwing 100, okay? And I won't. But I want to say the issue opens up with a strong Batman-Nightwing conversation with Alfred Pennyworth's grave. And I think it finishes at that same conversation, comes back around the conversation by the end of the issue.
Yep.
But a bunch of the issue is spent on Nightwing doing Nightwing stuff, leading the Titans, saving his city, making everybody feel good about themselves, bringing Bloodhaven what they deserve. You know, it's truly an issue 100. I don't know. I've seen other big issues that fall flat. Nightwing 100 didn't do so. Would you agree?
No?
All right, what do you think?
I'm sorry.
We missed. When's the last time you read it? You've read it twice?
No.
So
I read it.
Chris
Okay.
needs to reread Nightwing 100 right now. But go ahead.
I think it was good. It made me, I was very happy to announce the Titans book because I'm not sick of him writing the Titans, but it's a Nightwing book. He does a lot with the Titans. Every time there's a conflict, which Nightwing needs to end, they show up. I was getting kind of annoyed.
I disagree.
with it. No. Come on.
He brings in Flash a couple times.
He brings in Flash for that crossover. That was fun. When he was fighting Blockbuster, the Titans were there. When he fought Heartless, the Titans were there. When
fights Heartless?
Bloodhaven was on fire, the Titans were there. It's not even that big a deal.
And
It's just something.
and that
here's
makes
the thing.
sense because he's building this
I'm happy
Titan.
you really like that 100 because Tom Taylor has been talking about it forever, and this is something you wouldn't know because I'm more social media-ly active. Not like as in posting, but as in like
I don't even
perpetually
know.
online. And Tom Taylor has been talking about this since the beginning of the series. I'm gonna do something crazy in issue 100. I'm gonna do something big. And if that was what was, so I've been thinking that was gonna be the turning point in this series.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, and not a lot really happens.
So again, I'm going to strongly disagree with Chris Potter on this one. What would you say is the big thing he did in issue 100?
Move the Titans to Bloodhaven.
He put the Titans Tower in Bloodhaven.
Okay.
That's great. For Nightwing fans, for Titans fans, you know that that's going to be a more Titan, Dick Grayson relevant series going forward because it's in Bloodhaven. So I think that's a huge thing. I don't know what town the Titans Tower was in prior to this.
It's been all over the place. It was in San Francisco for a little bit.
Right. Wherever. Now it's in Bloodhaven, okay? And it's at the front of Bloodhaven when you come through the bridge from wherever, Gotham or whatever.
Right.
It's supposed to be the first thing you see. And he gets offered to be the captain of the Justice League in the beginning of this issue 100. We're spending way too much time on this 100 issue. But he turns it down because he feels better being the captain of the Titans. He thinks he can do better work with the Titans. He's worked with the Titans for his whole life, and I believe in this Dark Crisis that passed, that's primarily who was helping the Dark Crisis along defeating Deathstroke, was the Titans. And Chris appreciates the Titans quite a bit. He's a fan of the Titans.
I'm more excited for that book than I am for this book.
So don't let himself sound like he's trying to shoot down the Titans, because he's not. I think what Chris is trying to say is he was expecting more than Tom Taylor delivered.
I was expecting more about the ongoing Nightwing story, and it really just set up the Titans story.
Which I'd argue is the ongoing Nightwing story.
It might be.
And off of what Chris is saying.
I don't love, though, that if we're going to do a Titans book by Tom Taylor, it's going to be adjacent to Nightwing. I think they can be different books, and we'll see when Titans comes out. We'll see what he does with Titans. I don't want to deal with Heartless in that book, with the ongoing blockbuster conflict. I want them to do different things, and by setting it in Bloodhaven, it sounds like they're not. Maybe it'll work. And for the until 100, I had full faith in the series. I still do going into this issue. This was a great issue. I thought it was very... Great is a bit of a stretch, but it was really good. I thought he wasted a bit too much time in the beginning.
Let me go back to what I was saying.
Sure.
Sorry. Chris is done. Chris was saying that the Titans had appeared a bunch of times in Nightwing. He's probably right. He's got a better memory for comics than I do. I only remember the stuff I like. Maybe I didn't like the Titan stuff as much. But I wouldn't say that he was relying on the Titans as much as the Titans are a useful utility to him. And why not? Why wouldn't the Titans be at his disposal throughout? Whenever, right? Especially Flash, who can do multiple things at once. Yeah. So, as a writer of comics, if you know where you're going, and he started writing this around issue 74, 75, 78, he's had 22 issues to plan before issue 100. He knew where he was going. So those little appearances of the Titans throughout the series is him telling you, we're going somewhere. It's not him forcing the Titans, as Chris may feel it is. It's him saying, I want to write this Nightwing story, but I want you guys to know the Titans are around, right? So he's going somewhere. So I compliment him based off of that. And this issue 100, yeah, there was a lot of Titan stuff, but there was plenty of Dick stuff. There was plenty of Dick Grayson being Dick Grayson, developing who he is further, and there was some great conversations between him and Bruce. So anyway, we're going to go into 101 now. Right. And I open this up by saying that I feel sorry for Tom Taylor. The reason why I feel sorry for Tom Taylor is I think he nailed that issue 100. So much so that this 101 almost falls flat as a follow-up. And this will happen whenever you hit big issues. You really got to do something new and exciting in the issue that comes after those big issues, or else your issue's just not going to feel as fleshed out as the issue that came before it. Would you say that he falls a little flat in this one?
I like this one more. I'm sorry.
I'll let you
it was just picking up the ongoing Nightwing plot.
I'll let you take the summary then, Chris.
So there's this guy, so we start off in a demon realm. It's not hell, it's not Trigon's realm.
Really strong first page.
Yeah, it's really well colored too. It's really this very vibrant pink almost.
Probably why I thought it was Bond villains.
Yeah, because Bond villain loves their pinks and their really strong oranges and yellows. Yeah. Which is all in that hell sequence.
For sure.
And there's this demon. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, it's Neron.
Neron. And Neron is talking to these minor demons Nightwing ran into in issue 98.
Mm-hmm.
Nightwing helps save Blockbuster's kid because these demons want this kid's soul because after Blockbuster died, they can't get Blockbuster's soul anymore, and he made a deal with them. So they're taking his kid as substitute, and Nightwing helps defend this kid.
Definitely more to explain there from Tom Taylor. Not exactly sure the ties between Blockbuster and Hell, but it's fine. It's fine. The issue 98 was also mostly an issue that's spent on like this Nightwing Mixplex imp, and the imp introduces this kid to Nightwing as mostly Nightwing's #1 fan. And so it's really that Nightwing wants to save this kid. The background to her doesn't seem that important in that issue until this issue when they try and make sure that let you know that Blockbuster has ties to something that's going on in like Demon World or Hell or whatever it's called in DC. And continue with the summary.
So this demon Neron goes to this guy, the Grinning Man, who I have never. Do you know? Have you been introduced to him before?
King of Latava. Who
his villain name is the Grinning Man.
So,
I think. And this guy, the Grinning Man, he's a shapeshifter of some kind, but he always has this permanent big smile. Almost, it's very Joker. So this demon Neron goes to him because in order to be instated as the king of Latava, he made a deal with this demon. Now he's collecting to increase the Grinning Man's lifespan because he gave up either his lifespan or how much time he has until he takes his soul to be this king.
Yeah.
So he can both rule and then murder his subjects as he chooses.
Yeah.
So, because they're trying to break into this, magically protected area that Dick, Raven, and Beast Boy have created for Blockbuster's child.
More accurately, they want to abduct Blockbuster's kid.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the kid is being protected by the Titans. And that's where the story goes right after this Neron thing.
Which is what I was talking about. I talked about very briefly at the start.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time on this little make-believe game. It's cute. Tom Taylor loves doing stuff like this where he will, I don't want to say waste time, but he kind of...
Character development. Especially, for Raven. Raven is usually a dark, shadowy character that
maybe character establishment. I don't think it moves the character forward. He's more... I guess you could say it establishes his tone for that character.
You're only reading
That's fair enough.
If you're only reading Nightwing, and maybe even you only jumped on when Tom Taylor started writing Nightwing, it's important for him to do stuff like this because what other book is Raven showing up in? I'm not reading any book that Raven's in. No. My knowledge of actual Raven is from the Teen Titans animated series, which for like advice for life, don't take animated series as your background for characters in comics. They're often very different. So I'd compliment Tom Taylor for doing a little bit of... He's not developing Kid Flash here. He's not developing Donna Troy here.
Yeah.
He's developing Beast Boy and Raven, who have a relationship themselves, and he's developing that this girl, Raven, has a relationship with Desmond's kid now because she was the one who was able to protect her from the demons back in issue 98. That's who Nightwing called upon to deal with this kind of stuff when he was dealing with it, because he doesn't have an answer to this kind of thing. So, I see what you're saying. They spent 3 or 4 pages on this thing, and one of those pages is a full-on splash page, just like the...
Garfield as a horse.
Yeah, as a horse, as a unicorn hanging out with Blockbuster's kid. So, yeah, I wouldn't call it wasted space. The only reason I could see that it's wasted space is there are 2 stories in this book.
That's right.
There are 2 stories in this Nightwing issue. But please continue to finish the summary of the first one.
So, they find out that in the ruin of Titan's Tower is a body, and they're all very concerned about this because before the establishment of the Bloodhaven Titan's Tower, there was one elsewhere, and it was a school. And they think all the students are accounted for, but they're very worried that a student was killed and they didn't know about it.
And not just that, but the Titans were taking point guard on this whole Dark Crisis thing. Yeah. So if anybody's responsible for anything that happens in this event and the repercussions of this event, it's probably the Titans. And furthermore, Starfire, because I guess she was the like dean of the school or what have you, so she feels extremely responsible for whoever or whatever might be underneath there.
Yeah. So they go to check out this building. They move a bunch of rubble.
Yeah.
Starfire
literally lifts, 40 tons of rocks.
Yeah. After superheating herself, she can fly down into the rubble so she can lift it all up.
Because you got to be careful when you're moving rubble. That's a real big reason why it takes time to save people from things like that. Is because if you move rubble in the wrong way, you can crush them or destroy them or anything. So this is, I'd like to think Starfire's most careful way of doing this anyway.
And what they find is the Grinning Man. They find the King of Latov. He's been dead for weeks, apparently.
And there's a meeting between Nightwing and the
Amanda Waller.
Amanda Waller, and then Amanda Waller steps in and sends this body over to her people.
I think it's actually they're from
the Vlatava people. And Amanda Waller's getting involved because now this is an
international
incident. So Nightwing follows the body basically because he thinks that there's more here. Being Nightwing, being the son of Batman, and they go over to this. What's the word for the people that go and dissect dead bodies? There's a word for it. The
mortician.
I think that's the person who paints them when they're done. Okay. There's a person in the morgue, and this person's trying to help Nightwing figure out what's going on. Nightwing's trying to help this person figure out what's going on. Nightwing turns to look at something in the body real quick, and this person takes out some really heavy machinery from the morgue and hits him over the head with it, and he gets knocked out. And that's where that story ends, right? That's where we get the
more or less. He then goes to the secluded spot with Raven and Beast Boy because they think he's Nightwing. They're going into.
She copies the mortician, because for lack of a better word, then shows us a Clayface kind of thing real quick, and morphs into Nightwing, and then goes outside and goes and talks to Gar and Raven, whoever else, the Starfire, and whoever else is there, and they're gonna go to Vlatava now, I guess. With the Titans.
I really like the art in that page because the entire time he's talking, you're either seeing him from only the mouth down, or he's completely secluded in shadow, and all you can see is his big old grin.
Yeah,
it's very effective at making him look creepy.
So there's a bunch of stuff about this issue that looks like bothered me or more than it bothered Chris. And one of those things is that Raven has pretty refined senses at this point, I'd say. And I think that's one of the things that Tom Taylor's trying to show us through showing us Raven these couple times.
Yeah. So should Beast Boy.
I think she even creeps up on somebody at a point and she's reading their minds or something like that. Yeah, Beast Boy's an animal man. So he should be able to smell things miles away and stuff like that.
However, we're dealing with demons here, and specifically demons powerful enough.
One of those two characters, Gar or Raven, should have picked up on, in my opinion, this is not Dick Grayson.
Also, the obvious one that, Dick doesn't smile like that. I don't think Dick would ever look like that for an extended period. He looks wrong.
That might have been an aside for the audience, for us.
Yeah.
That they didn't pick up on. In paneling, it's hard to tell how long a person's holding a facial expression. So for all we know, that would have been a minor second for us to see that this is not Dick Grayson. But they might not have picked up on that. But they have powers that we don't have. And they should be able to pick up on stuff like that. For all we know, though,
they did, and this is part of the plan.
Right. The next issue, and Tom Taylor does stuff like this, the next issue might be them, as soon as they enter Vlatava, going, all right, who are you? Because, it would be a hard pill for me to swallow if they don't figure that out pretty fast. All right, so back to them charging us another $1 on this comic book that I'm not a fan of. This is not a $4 issue of Nightwing, which it has been for 22 issues, and before that, this is a $5 issue of Nightwing. And the way that they delivered this extra $1 is they gave us 8 pages of extra material. The upside of that is cool. I'd pay $1 for 8 pages of Tom Taylor Nightwing. That seems good. The only downside is this story has no bearing to the current continuity or the current story that's happening in the A story. So you're buying a Nightwing book, and you're reading Nightwing at 2 different points in time in Nightwing's history, with the same writer writing both of those points in time, referring to another point in time that he had written prior to the point in time we're currently in. Now, if I've ever heard of a confusing comic book, this was a confusing comic book. Because, okay, I've read a lot of comics. I can disassociate these things.
I don't remember if there was another title page. I think it was an ad break, and then another story.
I want to say that there's not even an ad break in there. If there is an ad break, that's the only thing separating these two
ad breaks in between pages, not uncommon.
That's not, not exactly the way you should be separating a story here.
Yeah.
The artists are fairly similar, even. And I do want to compliment the artist on the second one more than I like the second artist more than I like the first artist. I have nothing against Travis Moore. He's not one of my favorites. He actually did a World's Finest issue with Dick Grayson in the past fairly recently. That was a lot of fun. But this is Eduardo Pansica, Julio Ferreira, and Adriano Lucas again doing the colors. And It looks pretty good. It's like it reminds me of when Javier Fernandez was doing Nightwing. There's a lot of like cross hatching and like a lot of like really fancy line work and stuff. Doesn't really look too digital. They might have done it digitally in pencils, but then they brought it back out and did all the inks and stuff. And the colorist is still doing a good job. That's probably why I thought it was Bond villain this whole time.
Yep.
So I gotta compliment the art, but this is my problem with this book. This is my problem with this story. This is my problem with where Nightwing is going right now. Is this story is off of an annual that had happened earlier. And in that annual, there's like a cute little John Kent relying on Dick Grayson story. That was great. It was a fantastic story. But it began and ended. We didn't need anything else there. And I haven't talked about it since. That annual was 6-7 issues ago or something like that. And it was way more relevant when Tom Taylor was writing the Son of Kal-El Superman title, which he's going to continue doing a 6-shot for John Kent, but it's under a different name, different title, tackling different subject matter.
Yeah.
So this is a little ham-fisted. This is him going and kind of forcing some Nightwing upon us, which is fine because I bought a Nightwing book. But 8 pages, it was so short. I felt like I read those 8 pages in
and it wasn't
30.
It's not a 2-parter, right? That it was done at the end.
No, it's a 2-parter. The end is like Nightwing's getting blown up and like,
I did read this story, but I have forgotten everything but that John shows up.
Yeah, John shows up. They go and do some research in something, and then the building that Nightwing goes to gets blown up, and John has to like pull him out.
Oh, they're in the circus.
Sure.
they're in a circus, and I do remember this story.
It's all coming back.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. They go because someone is replicating Dick's exact situation that made him Robin.
Right, there's a kid.
He's about to fall. They're having a cute little line with him and John where he's talking about picking people up, and he's using acrobatic metaphors to talk about his relationship with John.
Yeah.
And then they cut to this. We're led to believe at first it's Dick and Mary Grayson doing just a trapeze act in the past.
I don't think so, but maybe.
Yeah. But then we cut instead, and we learn it's a different circus duo, and someone tried to replicate the Grayson incident, and Superman and Dick save him, and then they find out there's a bomb, the tent explodes.
So what I find interesting is me and Chris actually took different things from the story. I didn't catch those metaphors at all.
Okay.
Not a thing. And maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe I was just distracted because I thought this story was going to progress the plot of the prior story. It didn't. So I'm sitting here reading the story, maybe not paying attention enough because now I'm distracted by what's going on.
Yeah.
And I saw the story elements that Chris is talking about, but I didn't remember there being like a Nightwing superimposing his parents onto the faces of these people that might actually die. And
I don't think they just kind of look like them.
Okay,
it's
so
like a young boy with black hair, and then a young circus woman with black hair.
So this might be you taking the proper illusions, not illusions, but allusions out of this that maybe Tom Taylor was trying to deliver. I didn't see that at all. I saw 2 trapeze artists about to lose their kid. And then me assuming that the wire was probably cut. We end up finding the wire was cut, that there is some background to this. And then Nightwing's like, wait, if there's something that's going to distract me to bring me here, like trapeze artists falling, probably one of the things that Nightwing's most interested in.
Yeah.
There's a reason why this happened, and then he goes and tells Superman to look for a bomb, because it's probably a trap. It is. There's a bomb in a teddy bear, and it explodes. That's basically where we leave that little 8-page story at the end of that.
Yeah. I actually... Now that I'm remembering that, it is more relevant than I think, because what we've been led to believe about Heartless, he's obsessed with the murder of the Graysons.
Yeah.
So this is almost definitely him setting up for the next Heartless story, which is that's his overarching villain. He's been setting this up since the start. So
and I'm cool
this
with that.
does advance the plot more than I remember.
And I'm cool with that. I like the Heartless stuff. Chris might not be as much of a fan, but you got to realize something.
Solid.
You got to realize something, Weekly Wednesday Warriors. I'm the Nightwing fan. Chris likes Nightwing. Chris likes Tom Taylor. I love Dick. And I love Tom Taylor. I love Tom Taylor so much. So, excuse me when my opinions tend to be a little biased. It's going to happen. It's going to keep happening. And this is probably the one occasion where it doesn't happen that hard, because this is probably the worst Nightwing issue I think I've read in 23 issues or so. Chris is going to disagree with me because he actually enjoyed this issue, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because this has been the most non-Dick Grayson episode, I'd say, across all of the stuff. They spent a lot of time on other characters that weren't Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
They spent time on John Kent. They spent time on Garth, on Raven, on Blockbuster's Kid. They spent a lot of time on stuff that wasn't Dick Grayson. So you can understand where a Dick Grayson fan would not be as thrilled about this issue. And when they opened that comic book so well with that first page, the whole page is black. It's got some really cool tones. Colors are good. Demons are going on. You're like, oh man, where's this going? And then the Neron plot gets dropped pretty dang quickly in the first part of that issue.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I think Tom Taylor knocked it out of the park with the last one. I think I'm a little let down by this next one because it wasn't what I was seeing out of the first one. But I'm still strapped in. My seatbelt's on. I'm down for this ride.
I'll give Tom some credit because he is creating a rogues gallery for Nightwing. Because unlike with a Batman or even a Flash, he doesn't have a built-in rogues gallery that much. He has like Blockbuster. If you like the Tim Seeley stuff, he has Raptor.
And Blockbuster. And then
besides that,
he's got Batman.
They've tried. They
borrowing.
keep trying to make a Nightwing rogues gallery. Let's see. There's like a holdover once or twice, but they usually become Batman villains.
They're rogues. Yeah, he shares the same exact people with Batman.
So good on Tom for trying to set up recurring antagonists for Nightwing in this run. So we do have like characters we can look forward to showing up and what they're doing and their machinations.
You got anything to add, Chris?
Besides that, no. I'm good.
We're gonna wrap this episode up of the weekly Wednesday Warrior. We got a Shonen Jump review coming real soon that you should follow and subscribe and like and stuff. Keep your eyes on things coming. Thanks for watching. See you next time.